Welcome back, everyone. Phoenix 3 here, and I wanted to make a follow-up video to my video about my thoughts on the Pokken Tournament roster, and it went about as well as I thought it would. People didn't like the video. People weren't supposed to like the video. That was the that's the purpose that I'm trying to get across here. Now, let me start by saying there are very few things that I praise, and that's because they continuously fuck it up. And the things that I do praise, even though these things do have flaws in them themselves, they tend to come across extremely well. The reason that I keep using Mortal Kombat X as an example is because they did it right. The game released with over 25 characters. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, Mortal Kombat is an established franchise and they already had all. No, 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 no. They didn't reuse any assets from Mortal Kombat 9. The Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat X is not the same Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat 9. The Scorpion and Sub-Zero in Mortal Kombat X aren't the same Scorpion and Sub-Zero as in Mortal Kombat 9. Same with Sonya. Same with everyone. Even though they did reuse characters, because let's be real, this is a franchise and they do have established characters, they changed them up as well as added new characters to the roster. The game has a fully fledged story mode, huge amounts of content in disc and ready for its shipping date. And I know people are going to say, well, Scorpion still uses his spear, and Sub-Zero still shoots ice, and Johnny Cage still has his nut punch. It's like, yeah, those are signature moves to him. But it's just like me saying, oh, well, Charizard's not a new character because you know it's going to breathe fire. Or Pikachu's not a new character because you know it's going to use electricity. Or Lucario's not a new character because it's just going to use aura type attacks. Those are real childish excuses. Or not even excuses, but childish arguments in terms of why something can't be here. There's one thing that I want people to understand. Pokken Tournament and Mortal Kombat X started their development around the same time. But one of these games released with way more content, way more work, way more effort. Essentially, Mortal Kombat X released with 75 different characters through because of their variation system. All the characters have new fatalities. All the characters also have like what 13, 14 different brutalities they can use. Different just different everything. And a lot of these characters also sporting different 3D model alts that they actually use. And when fans get together and say, well, maybe Pokken Tournament should release with more than 14 Pokemon in it, and these people get attacked for holding that belief, like there's one thing I want people to understand, and Pokken Tournament is a Pokemon game. That's what it is first. And I want people to really understand that this is a Pokemon game. Releasing with a total 16 character roster with only 14 of the 720 Pokemon species in the game is it, it's not acceptable. And I don't know why people defend this. None of us are saying they should make all 720 Pokemon playable. Nobody wants that. But what we are saying is that would it kill them to have at least 30? 30 completely viable Pokemon? And no, it wouldn't. I don't care if this is this game's first fighting game. Bandai Namco's been making game or fighting games for almost 25 years now. They know how to make fighting games. And while I can understand that these companies don't want to put all their eggs in one basket, money wise, between Nintendo, Game Freak, the Pokemon Company, and Bandai Namco, they can afford to put in more than 16 characters. Um, and just something else I do want to say. for sure, just so we can kind of just shut all of this up right now. But Street Fighter V released with 16 characters. It released with no single player or single player versus. It's just the most bare bones experience you can get. And they've made Street Fighter games for how long now? And they seem to think it's okay to release a small roster for a game. The reason we expect a large roster in Pokemon Tournament is because it's a Pokemon game, and that's what we want. We want to be able to play with our favorites in the game, and we don't want to see duplicate characters like Pikachu and Mewtwo. We don't want to see that. We want to see something different. The reason I'm so adamant about this game is because I want it to do well. I want them to treat this like a Pokemon game and not just a fighting game with Pokemon skinned over it. You know, I don't understand where this mindset came from, where it's okay for developers in 2016 to release games with less and less content. I don't understand why people defend this. And I know fanboyism is a very real thing, but it just really makes it seem like no one cares about the way the gaming industry is going. Look at it this way. You remember that review that Angry Joe did on Metal Gear Solid, whichever one it was, Ground Zero? You remember how angry he was at that? That the game only had like what, less than 2 hours of gameplay? What if the norm suddenly became games where their only focus is their single player campaign mode, has a story that's under 2 hours? That's unacceptable. I do not want to play a game where its story mode, its selling point, its single player story content is less than 2 hours long. If I were to buy a Tomb Raider game right now and I finished it in one sitting, expecting there to be more, I'm gonna lose my fucking shit. Because we should not have to tolerate game developers just giving us shit and then having people defend it. We should never have to say as gamers, well, if you take the time to explore the environment and look at all the collectibles that they have in the game, you should be able to get at least 8 hours out of it. No, we shouldn't have to say that. I should be able to sit down and get tired of playing a game before I actually like get finished with it. This isn't like how I can play a Sonic game in one sitting. Every Sonic game I've ever played, you had to play in one sitting. So when people say, "Oh, well, Sonic Generations was too short," I'm like, "Well, no, that's the appropriate size for a Sonic game." But I've never been able to finish a Tomb Raider game in 2 hours. Sure, you can speed run a Tomb Raider game in 2 hours, but I've never been able to speed run a Tomb Raider game in 2 hours. That wasn't a thing back then. It took you probably what, between trial and error, 15, 20 hours to finish a Tomb Raider game. And once you got good at the game and played it the way the developers intended, you could maybe reduce that down to like 5, 6 hours. But no, people think it's okay for developers to release less and less content, but ask for more money for it. Look at The Last of Us. Very good game. And I can praise this game for what it did. It didn't shove a 2 hour story down your throat. It shoved character at you. It gave you a really deep story where everything was changing. That's the way I expect my games to be when I buy them. It's the reason I don't watch movies anymore, because they're all shit. They don't try to innovate. They rather just give you the exact same thing that every other movie has done before it, and then say, "Hey, give me your money." And then when the second anybody has any ounce of criticism towards it, because I know the medium, this is shit that I do, people want to defend it. No, we should not have to accept shitty movies. Just like we shouldn't have to accept shitty games. Pokken Tournament looks fun as fuck. But this is a Pokemon game. And its main selling point is the roster. And the roster is pretty shitty. It doesn't try to do anything new for what you expect for a Pokemon game. The things that I expected in this game aren't here. Now, I don't care about a story in a Pokemon game. I want to be able to play as my favorite Pokemon, just like everyone else. Now, of course, some of the species of Pokemon are going to get shafted because they're just not feasible as fighters. But nobody is saying, let's make Feebas a playable character. People are saying, let's make Milotic a playable character. That's reasonable. I can see that. But why don't we have any characters in the game to rep that body type? You know, things I think should be here. We don't have any birds. They should be here. We don't have any serpents. They should be here. The only inanimate that we have is Chandelure, and nobody expected that. But I would like to see another one of those in the game. I would love to see Aegislash in the game. But I mean, I guess at this point I don't want to see any more ghost Pokemon because Bandai Namco has shown they don't know how to handle zoners. But maybe give us an inanimate that's not a ghost. Give us some more quadrupeds as well. We don't have an evolution in this game that's playable yet. I would love. I really don't care about Absol, but it's a Pokemon that deserves to be here. Um, I expect to see these things in a Pokemon game, but instead we just get a very boring roster of mostly humanoid bipedal Pokemon. That's not Pokemon, and I have a problem with that because I had a vision for this game, and it seems like the developers don't, and I understand what happened here. I know what happened here. Basically, the developers didn't know shit about Pokemon when they were asked to make this game, and they already had in their mind what they wanted. And it was towards the end of development that they actually started experimenting with other Pokemon. But the game is boring in terms of just the representation of the body types of the Pokemon world. If you were to watch battles on Pokemon Showdown, you will see that teams don't look the way they do in Pokken Tournament. Uh, There are teams of everything, and the support system gives life to Pokemon that otherwise can't be playable, like Magikarp, a Pokemon that should be there. We shouldn't have Latios on support. Cresselia on support is fine. We shouldn't have Reshiram on support. Reshiram should be playable. But I'm not sure what type of scale they're trying to go for this game, and these cover legendaries tend to be very large. But there's no reason that Latios can't be playable. I don't I don't understand what's like going on here in terms of the roster. And the one thing that I expect are the Pokemon fans to come together and say, you know what? Yes, I do expect more from this game. It's not like fighting games are new because they're not. And a company making them has been making them for years. They know fighting games. If somebody were to say, hey, you know, name one company that's really good at making fighting games, I almost guarantee you people will say Capcom and Bandai Namco because that's their thing. That's what they're known for. But even I could probably say the developers of Killer Instinct, the new one, would handle Pokken Tournament a whole lot better than what Bandai Namco is. And that's because they put love and passion into their characters. Well, sure, their game's a little on the short side, but you can't say any character plays the same as another. You can't say that. And while I can say the same thing about Pokken Tournament, but all of these characters in Pokemon Tournament don't fight like how you expect the Pokemon would. Pikachu has a forced personality in this game. Pikachu shouldn't be doing Electric Wind God Fist, hunting hawks, and Hell Sweeps. That's not what Pikachu does. That's what Heihachi does, but that's not what Pikachu does. Same thing with me. Why do we need two Mewtwo's? And they play almost identically like to one another. This is what I'm expecting of a reasonable fan base to say this is wrong and they should fix it. But no, people just fanboy it and see that there's nothing wrong with it. Pokken Tournament looks really good, but I expected more from this game. And it seems like people don't want that. They're willing to say, "Oh well, this game is in its first one, so I can support this small roster." No, I can't because I'm not going to settle for less when they're still asking me for my $60 for the game. When is this going to stop? I don't want to play um, adventure games with a 2-hour story. I don't want to play that. And even nowadays, RPGs are getting shorter. When you used to be able to sit down for 60, 70 hours with the game just between actual playable content and like cutscenes, now they're going like between 10 hours and less for an RPG. Like, don't you miss that feeling where you could sit down with a game and not have any idea what's going on? Now, part of the blame for this is the internet, and that's just the way these things go. But don't people used to love the idea when they're playing a fighting game, they're unlocking new characters, where a game would release with a lot of like Tekken 3 released what on this 20 something characters. Um, and I would hate to compare Pokken Tournament to old games, but even older generation games release way more content. And people seem to think it's okay. Now, there's one thing I want people to understand. Yes, Smash 64 released with like what, 12 characters? But that's a 17-year-old game on inferior hardware with different standards in game development. Nowadays, we should be able to do way more. Things are easier to make now. But people put so much emphasis on, well, you got to look at the budget for the game as well. I mean, I don't care about the budget for the game simply because these development studios, excuse me, but simply because these development studios want to pay $5 million to get Will Smith to voice act for them. You don't need to do all that. I would rather them spend that $5 million putting content in the game. Look at how pissed people were with Destiny when it released. The shit that we got versus what they promised. They took the game, butchered it, and they're releasing it in installments. Yes, video games are now more expensive to make, but I will not let that be an excuse for the reason why we get shit. We should be wanting to come together as gamers and saying 16 total characters on a roster for a Pokemon game is too small. Look at the shit people said when Pokemon X and Y came out. They said, "What? We only got 45 new characters for the game? That's absurd. Why can't we get the same 100 that we've been getting for the last every Pokemon game before that?" People lost their shit when they saw the Pokédex for this game and how bare bones it was. They didn't care that they had to remake every Pokemon model for this game. They didn't care that they had to work a graphics engine to give the same sprite look of the previous games. They didn't care about that. They looked at the game and said, this game is bare bones, that this is a bad game because it doesn't have more than 100 new Pokemon in it, that it didn't try anything new. Look at what happened with Pokemon Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. People lost their shit because the Battle Frontier wasn't even in the game. Like, they should have been. Why would you remove content from a game that already existed? All the assets were already made. They already had all the Pokemon models. What did they do? Make 3 models for a handful of Mega Pokemon? And that's it? People don't care about all the work that goes into the game when it's something against what they like. But people think it's okay for this shit to fly for Pokken Tournament? No, it's not. This is a bare bones game. The roster sucks. The fighting in the game looks really good. The game is visually impressive. I would have much rather the game be on a more powerful system so we can have that same arcade look. But the game looks fun. Some of the Pokemon should be there. Machamp should be in this game. Weavile should be in this game. Just like Chandelure and Suicune. I mean, of course, you have to have Pikachu and Charizard in this game. But when you get past the Pokemon that have to be in the game, which are Pikachu, Charizard, Mewtwo, and Lucario, that's already 4 spots taken from other characters that should have been in the game. And then we go ahead and double that with a second Pikachu and a second Mewtwo. That's 6 characters out of 10, or 6 characters out of 16 that have to be in the game. So essentially, we only got 10 real Pokemon in the game. 10. Does nobody else see a problem with that? This like I usually don't feel like I'm like the chosen one or something like that. I don't even care about that. But it just seems like on a regular basis that I deal with too many dumb people. And it's like rather than have their own opinion on something, they rather be told what to like. Like 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 sheep. Whatever Nintendo releases, people will automatically buy. The reason I didn't buy Splatoon is because it's a bad game. Why is it a bad game? Because they don't have voice chat in the game. If I'm going to be playing an objective based game mode, I should be allowed to talk with my team. I can do this in Destiny, and I can do this in every Call of Duty game that I've played. Somebody is probably going to say something like, well, it helps with the netcode. I'm playing Call of Duty Black Ops 3 online, and I have not had any issues with lag because of voice chat. None at all. Same with Destiny. I have not had these issues. If an enemy is taking the C flag, I should be able to tell them I'm going to C to help defend the flag. Does anybody want to back me up? That's what Splatoon should have. And if Splatoon had it, I would have bought that game. But because they removed a feature that every modern game has, I didn't buy it. It's a bad game. Now you're going to have people that are going to defend that. Oh, well, you have to look at what it did right. Well, removing voice chat in a game that's supposed to be what, a competitive online shooter is the wrong move. That alone makes the game a no buy for me. Now maybe if they put it in down the line, I'll pick the game up and then try it out because I enjoy shooters. But you're not going to take away tools from me that I need to properly play one. And that's the way that I feel Pokken Tournament is doing right now. They took away what made Pokemon Pokemon for the sake of making a Pokemon fighting game. And people are going to say, well, this is a fighter first. And and I hear your arguments. If this was any other fighting game out there where they just started to develop characters for a game, then I will be fine with a 12 to 16 character roster. And that's largely because none of the characters in that game have a fan following. None of them do. But Pokemon do have fan followings. And a lot of the Pokemon that people want in the game aren't unreasonable picks. Sure, all of these other Pokemon aren't Pikachu tier popular or like Charizard tier popular, but at least the majority of them are like Gengar tier popular. And that's like the thing that I'm trying to say. When I look through my comments and I see people justifying why they made the game this way, I can't support it because no, this is bad for a game being made in 2016 or at least released in 2016. We have certain development standards that should be met. If Mortal Kombat X can recreate every single asset for a game and have it released within 2 years with a ton of content, then we should expect a company who makes nothing but fighting games to be able to do this. It's not like Pokken Tournament is their first fighting game. It's not. And if these people had any kind of vision whatsoever, they wouldn't have to have gone back to remake the fighting engine for the game. I'm glad the way it turned out. The game looks really good, but what's to stop them from adding a second Charizard or a second Lucario? Or hell, even put Greninja in the game. I don't want Greninja here, but I mean, for crying out loud, I mean, I expected something different than what we've gotten, and that's basically just like how I feel about that. I just want other people to come in and be like, yes, 16 will be acceptable for any other fighting game franchise, but not Pokemon because this is a Pokemon game. And that's the one thing that I want people to realize. If you wouldn't accept a 2-hour story mode in a Tomb Raider game, then why would it be okay to expect a low roster for a fighting game? I don't care if it's his first game. A lot of game developers in their first game release a ton of content. Look at Super Meat Boy. That game had what, over 150 stages in it? You wouldn't even get like 2% of that in a AAA title game. Like I don't understand the hypocrisy here. Like if an indie developer can do more with less time and nowhere near the budget of a AAA studio, then I expect a AAA studio to at least deliver on the content in. There's no reason Pokken Tournament should not have at least 30 playable Pokemon. And then it just grows from there. But people are fine with accepting less effort and less content in games, but willing to spend the same amount of money. I don't understand it. I mean, but I guess that's all I have to say on that. But I do want to know what you guys think about it. And this video here was meant to make people mad because I want people to be mad. So I mean, if you like the video, be sure to like it. I don't expect anybody to automatically dislike it because I said something that they didn't agree with. You know, don't be sheep. Have your own opinion. Think about the things because I thought about it. I just want everybody else to think about it as well. Be sure to subscribe to my channel because I'm always going to be talking about or Pokemon or just random shit that I think people are fucking up on. And as always, I want to take your time. I want to take the time to thank you guys for watching my videos, and I hope to see you all in the next one.